Welcome to Thoughts, The Wax Mask, 1997, or M.D.C, and I'm going to butcher this, obviously, Maschera di Cera, which is the original title. Happy Spooktober. That's right, another Giallo after Blue Sunshine. Totally planned it this way. Barely slept last night, but still recording this now because this is the best time of the week to record. And besides, I don't know if I'll get to sleep tonight or the night after, so here we go. If you don't care about these disclaimers, I try to keep them short and relevant, but your mileage may vary. You can skip right ahead to the section of your choice via the description box. I often try to talk very fast during the disclaimers, since a lot of it is very standard information. I'm not going to keep speaking as fast as I sometimes do during this section once I get into the video itself. I realize this video is long. I'm going to do what I can to make it worth your time. Now, this contains spoilers. I'm probably also going to be spoiling the first two versions, the one from 1933 and one from 1953. I have not watched the one from 1933, but as far as I understand, these basically, the ending, all three end in a very similar fashion. Now, let's see. Yeah, so this is, let's see. Yeah, on IMDb, there's this list of, when you look up a movie, there's a list of similar works. I'm afraid I haven't watched any of these, but this movie has been compared to The Church from 1989, Enigma from 87, The Sect 91, Skinner 1993, The Phantom of the Opera from 98, Paganini Horror 89, Night Killer 90, City of the Living Dead 1980, Voices from Beyond, crap, either from 90 or 91, something like that. 1991, probably. Murder, Rock, Dancing Death, 1984. The Three Faces of Terror, 2004. And Zombie 3, 1988. I'm afraid I'm not familiar with the source material. This is claimed to be an adaptation of a Gaston Leroux. I'm gonna go ahead and guess is how you pronounce his name. But apparently, according to Wikipedia, there isn't a specific story that's, that's particularly similar to this movie by the author, so I guess it's more like similarity to his other works, such as Phantom of the Opera. All I know about Phantom of the Opera is what I've gleaned from videos by Lindsay Ellis and Elisa Hansen, and yeah. I don't think I would be interested in it, but I do appreciate that there are some similarities. You've got a man with a disfigured face. Crap. Hmm. I guess technically these are so vague that they're not technically spoilers for Phantom of the Opera. I know a lot of spoilers about Phantom of the Opera, but I don't think I'm going to be spoiling that in this. And if I do, I'm going to warn first and like hold up a finger while I do it so you can skip ahead. Anyway, some similarities between Phantom of the Opera and Wax Mask. There's a man with a disfigured face who obsesses over people, wants to do something that others wouldn't like. It involves some murder. He's got a tragic backstory. So yeah, the it they didn't take all the aspects, and this was made in part by Dario Argento, and he went on to make. I don't think he was he working on it at the time? No, I think he was working on another movie when this was being made. But was he the director of the 1998 Phantom? Maybe. I'm gonna go ahead and take a page right out of the book of Lindsay Ellis and Lisa Hansen and just refer to it as Phantom instead of, not sure how much I'm gonna bring it up, but if I do, that's what I'm gonna call it. It is kind of funny how many reviews state as fact that there is a short story. Some even say that it's an entire novel, by the author about a wax museum. Hey, I don't fact check everything either. I just think it's kind of amusing. Just, a lot of people wrote their reviews not checking if there actually was a story. They just assumed because that was, and to be fair, in their defense, that was something that I forget if it was maybe Dario Argento's idea or something, but they said, no, 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 this is not a remake of either of the American movies. This is an adaptation of a story, but it's a remake. The certainly it bears a lot of similarities to the 1953 version. But yeah, the basically ah there's that sleep shortage kicking in. Let's see. The right. They didn't want any legal trouble, basically, so they claimed that it was an adaptation instead of a, you know, of a story by the author. And yeah. Now, let's see. Yeah, so I guess I should just briefly say I haven't watched the 1953 House of Wax in years, and I think I only did watch it once. But I kind of love the movie. I mean, I'll admit that I haven't watched that much Vincent Price, but I've loved everything I've seen of him. It's hard to, yeah. I I'm not currently planning on reviewing anything Vincent Price, but I do love watching it. The reason I did watch the 1953 was that my father watched it when he was young, and he had very strong memories of it. And I get why. It is an effective movie. There are a couple of parts where it's a little awkward because originally it was made for 3D, so you can, a lot of movies that were originally shot for 3D, when you watch them and it's not in 3D, you can, they have these little awkward bits where it's like, okay, that was supposed to be in 3D, but no, it's a really fun film, and if you at all think you would be into it, I definitely recommend watching it. It's a very, you know, for its time, obviously, but I found it to be very effective. And I don't just blindly enjoy, old stuff, but I've seen, I've seen some horror movies from the 50s that I did not particularly like. I can't remember the titles, but I like some of them. Some of them I don't like so much. But so yeah, it's difficult for me to compare the two. Overall, I probably prefer Vincent Price version, but I understand why others prefer this one. Now, let's see. So yeah, I don't intend to spoil anything other than these three movies. If I do, spoil anything, I'm gonna warn in advance and hold up a finger during it so you can mute and skip ahead until you see me lower the finger. And let's see. So, the other thing was, yes, I might bring up other movies, but I'm not going to spoil any without warning first. Excuse me. I watched the Italian original language with subtitles rather than the English dub, which I hear is terrible. And in general, I am not a fan of dubs. I get why some people are dubs over subs. I'm subs all the way. I love subs. I cannot stand dubs. Now, let's see. Right, so content warning and or trigger warning. Sorry, I have a hard time understanding the distinction, but I do really respect how necessary the terms are, and I want to cover my bases. I am going to be discussing the potentially triggering content of this movie, including child murder, killing out of jealousy, disfigurement, and severe burns. Now, let's I'm not sure if I'm going to be criticizing stuff like gore and nudity in this, but in case I do, I just want to make clear, I don't have a problem with violence and gore in general. The Thing is one of my favorite horror movies in general. I also love Cronenberg's The Fly, Videodrome, etc. And let's see. I also don't have. Yeah, I do just briefly. Personally, I don't think that it's wrong to put violence in fiction, except for the following, well, exceptions. If it could encourage xenophobia, and if it could make people think that violence is a solution to real life problems. There are almost no problems that it solves in real life. And this is, of course, one of the horror movies that uses the fact that some of the I don't know his name, but one of the assistants has like a scar, and we're supposed to take that as, that's supposed to make him scarier. We're supposed to think that if you have a scar, if you look scary, you probably are dangerous. And once the wax mask itself, and this is, I'm not saying that this is only for this, it's in all three versions. The idea of the disfigured face and the face mask covering it is supposed to be scary, and we're not supposed to empathize with, you know. I wish that it didn't, but I get why they do that in these movies. Now, let's see. And I mean, at the same time, I don't think that anybody watches this movie and then goes out and beats someone up who's got, burns on, you know. Now, I don't have a problem with film sexuality, nudity, disturbing and upsetting material in general. Monsters are one of my favorite movies. And let's see. Now, yeah, and in my opinion, the only way sex can be wrong is if consent is violated and or it's cheating. I do think there are relatively few situations where rape should appear in fiction. Ideally, it should explore what rape does to survivors. It should not be erotic, funny, throwaway. It should not be in the movie simply to motivate a man to get revenge for someone raping one of his loved ones. And, there's no rape scene in this, but the scenes of naked women strapped in the, you know, yeah, that is obviously, yeah, the for some it will be titillating, for others it will be frightening, and, I mean, it's not an accident that we don't see a man strapped down. We see two people strapped down, and both of them are women who've been stripped down. The like their nethers are covered, but they are topless, and yeah, you know. Now, let's see, and right, I don't think I will swear in this video. Now, let's see. Let's see. So, yeah, the this was where that list was supposed. I messed up my notes. Well, that's fine. The right, the thing with the thing and the this was where I was supposed to get into movies that are similar to this. And, I've already mentioned that my favorite, if we're talking about movies where, you have this thing of, like, the mentally ill person having burns on their face, and, creating a sorry, wax museum, and, you know, the where it's, where he's actually killing people and turning them into wax figures, rather than, you know Right. Actually, that was that. Yeah. If we're talking about that, then my favorite movie of this sort is House of Wax from 1953. But if we're talking about a horror movie with a lot of gore effects, then my favorite is by far the Thing from 1982. My least favorite movie that is similar to this is the 2005 House of Wax. I could watch it again and be fine, I guess, but I could never see it again and be fine too. I don't really. I mean, I don't intend to do a review of it. I'm not sure I would have much to say that Phalis didn't say. His review of it is more entertaining than the movie. I wish it was a much better movie because there are a few, yeah, real quick, spoilers for House of Wax 2005. I think that near the end, when they have to run up the wax stairs that are melting as they're running up them, I do think that is legitimately a very, like, that's legitimately scary. The idea of running upstairs that are melting right behind you, almost right beneath you. I wish it was just a much better movie, and I think it's silly to craft a slasher movie around the concept of this House of Wax. I think they had some good ideas. Like, there's this bit where one of them realizes, oh no, it's a person, and it's just there's this thin layer of wax, and he starts picking at it, and some of the skin comes with, and you see the bloody flesh underneath. That's legitimately a really creepy, yeah. I just I get it. It in 2005. If you want to make a horror movie, it's probably going to be teen oriented, and teen oriented means slashers. So, and it's not like I have a problem with slashers. Scream 1 and Scream 4 are two of my favorite movies. Halloween is right up there. It's probably tied with The Thing from 1982 as my favorite horror movie of all time, regardless of subgenre. I think that's all I have to say. Okay, so no more spoilers for House of Wax 2005, or if, you know, if I find that I have some later on, finger time. Now, let's see. I I think in some ways this is as effective as the 1953, you know, House, yeah, House of Wax. And I certainly do appreciate, it's obviously it's not trying to be the exact same thing. It's using the overall story and the sort of, one major thing that they have in common is the idea of someone going around killing people and then making them into wax figures. And this one adds some things to. Yeah, I don't remember the exact details, but in the 1953 one, I think it's basically just that he covers them with a layer of wax, and that's it. And here, you know, you have details like how they're still alive in there, which is just horrifying. And there's this scientific process with brightly colored chemicals and such. I really appreciate. Obviously you wouldn't have that in the 1953 one, and I always feel like if you do another version of a story that people know, you gotta add something. I don't think it's particularly interesting to just do a remake. I haven't, and I probably never will watch the 1998 Psycho remake because it's apparently shot for shot, and it's what's the point? Okay, and it like adds color. Psycho is not a movie that needs to not be in black and white. There are movies that are better in color, but Psycho is not one of them. If they wanted to make that movie in color, they could have. They were making color movies around the same time. Hitchcock made color movies before he made Psycho. It was a conscious decision. I'm not interested in the Psycho remake because it adds nothing, it changes nothing, at least not intentionally. Though I've heard that apparently some stuff slipped. Actually, yeah, apparently it added You know, I'm not even going to talk about it because it's just so unnecessary. Anyway, this is a remake that changes around some things. You know, I've seen someone note that the flashback of Boris falling into the you know, what's it called, the boiling wax, that's that's kind of the ending from the 1953 one. That's how that movie ends. And in that, I don't think he comes back up. But again, I only watched it once. It was years ago. But you know, and this goes and says, let's make that a flashback, and let's make him come back. And now it's, you know, because in the 1953 one, the reason he has, you know, he has burns on his face is from the wax museum burning down with him, like, I guess he was inside. I'm not remembering all the details. I remember how it made me feel. I don't remember all the things that were in the movie. And yeah, you know, in this they said no, he's got burns all over his body, you know, and so he has like this metallic hand, which is powerful enough that he can, you know, bury it in someone's chest and rip out their heart, and you know, things like this. You know, these are things that you wouldn't do in 1953, at least not in a Hollywood movie. And yeah, just, you know, they bring in some ideas that stuff you could do in a 1997 Italian horror movie that you couldn't in a 1953 American horror movie. And I think that is how you should do it. I don't really mind that they changed some stuff. I I mean, I've pretty much already said I don't, not all of the changes are like, I think some of them are for the better, and others, you know, yeah, there are things where I'm not gonna lie, the fact that this is very, by the end, this has really become very difficult to, you know, to believe as a, and once you see the very ending, it just, I mean, I don't, it doesn't bother me. I know it bothers other people. The fact that the ending is pure nonsense doesn't ruin the movie for me. I I feel bad for the people it does, and I'm not trying to be like high horse here. There are movies where, you know, a bad ending ruined the movie for me, but the at the end of the day, a lot of the stuff in the 1953 one you could basically believe. And in this one, there's a bunch of stuff, and you're not. I don't think you're supposed to believe it. And I don't. You know, I'm not sitting watching this movie thinking that's not realistic. That's not the point. You know, the movie makes it clear from very early on it's not supposed to be realistic. You know, it is basically, what is it they call heightened reality or something. I forget exactly what they call it, but you know, it's not supposed to be. We're not supposed to believe that this could actually happen or did actually happen. And like I said, that doesn't bother me, but I do find that overall I like better that the 1953 one. I guess I think to me, if you're going to go outside of what can be believed or credibly explained and such, I just I like when they go further out. You know, okay, I don't know if this counts as swearing. I guess that depends on your definition, but Hellraiser, I think that movie, the first one especially, and second one's the second one has some great stuff as well. I love that first movie, and that's basically, and Freddy Krueger, you know, the especially, you know, movies 2, 3, and 4, I would say are the by far my favorites. That's what I like if I'm going to go for a horror movie with gore where it can't really be explained rationally. I'm not as interested in something where, because at the end of the day there's not that much. It's there's a few major things in this where you can explain it. You can't explain how the fact that apparently the figures, or at least some of them, are still alive under the wax, and the yeah, the very ending with the walking skeletons. Sorry, skeleton. We only see the one, but technically the other one is one. No, yeah, sorry, there are two, aren't there? Yeah, and let's see, what was the other? I feel like there was one more thing, but right now I can't quite. Yeah, the whole chemical thing with turning the people into these wax figures. Also, these are the major things, and just the moment you have Cenobites or Freddy Krueger and such, at that point, basically everything, because these are movies where the bad guys can violate the laws of reality, and that's something I really, if I'm gonna go for a horror movie where there's at least some stuff that you can't completely explain, I prefer something that goes that far. But that is, I think, pretty much. Yeah, I hope that wasn't. I realize not everybody is going to find this equally interesting. What I'm hoping that this information will help you determine if what I'm going to say will be particularly relevant to you, and whether you're going to agree with me or not. And if you watched up to this point and you're like, okay, this guy is making no sense to me, I'm not going to watch the rest of the video, I have absolutely no problem with that. I don't want anyone to watch one of my videos and feel like I wasted their time. Now, let's see. So, and let's see. Yeah, so in these videos, I try to talk specifically about the subject, also issues that the subject brings up. I try to have a good balance between the two rather than letting one of them overwhelm the other. I realize not everybody wants both of these. Also, and you may have already guessed this, I am progressive, and I don't really keep politics out of my videos anymore, so if that's going to be something that bothers you, yeah. Now, let's see. Yeah, so this video is not a review. This is a series of, well, thoughts. Some of this analysis, some of this MST3K riff tracks, and other jokes, especially jokes in, let's see. No, never mind. Scratch that. Timecodes for the sections are in the description box. The first section is thoughts that I had while watching in chronological order. You can think of it as a running commentary or live tweeting or the like. The second section is thoughts that I had before watching, including, when applicable, my responses to various YouTube videos. There's not going to be a lot of that in this. And let's see. But yeah, the second section is also for anything I thought of entirely on my own that wasn't in response to something and that I thought of, well, before watching. And the final section, I get into stuff that I think it's worthwhile to get into on Rotten Tomatoes, Metacritic, IMDb, and Wikipedia. And for recording this video, I had read all of the research stuff that, yes. So, let's see. Yes, so the movie doesn't really have empathy for the least likable characters, and I don't think it would really. The movie would not have worked if there was particularly empathy. I mean, I guess the closest you could say is that maybe Alex wins a little bit of respect there near the end when he fights back against Boris. For one thing, for going up against the monster of the movie, for another thing, for standing up for himself. We he told Sonia and the audience about how his father hit him and he hated him for it. So when Boris hits him, yeah, he's not going to put up with him anymore. So there's a little bit, but otherwise, no, it doesn't really have empathy for it. And I don't think that it would have worked if it did. Now, let's see. and I'm gonna be criticizing some. I might criticize the decisions made by some of the characters. Personally, I try to approach every movie with as much empathy as possible for every character and the people working on it. And now, 1997 was 23 years ago, so I think it's relevant to say when I do a video on a movie or anything else that is not completely new, I try to put myself in the mindset of someone from that period experiencing it for the first time back when it originally came out, though I will analyze some things from a feminist perspective based on ideas that are more recent than the subject I review. Now, let's see. But yeah, when I watched this, yeah, I don't remember exactly when, but I'm gonna before the excuse me, before I'm through the first section, I will go into when I first watched this movie, but it was not in 1997. It was at least several years later. So, but I remember, I was watching horror movies in 1997, so I have a pretty good frame of reference. Now, I try not to review films that fall into genres that I don't like. So, anything negative I say in this, you know, I'm not, it's not that I would never be able to enjoy something like, once again, I love The Thing, I love House of Wax from 1953, and, I mean, I don't have much history with Italian horror, so I don't have much of a frame of reference, but it's not, there's, the way they make horror movies, doesn't bother me. I know some people find that they go too far with gore and nudity and such, and I understand that perspective. I don't personally think, I'm not going to claim that, obviously the nudity certainly is very gratuitous, but I'm, I'm not going to be talking about that in this video. Now, let's see. So, yes, as much as I love horror, it does tend to treat women kind of badly with, they're often disposable. Yeah, I mean, I guess there aren't that many. Actually, really the only really disposable woman in this is the blonde sex worker, pretty much. The other characters do, yeah, but she's there to add to the victim count, basically. And yeah, to have someone to strap to the chair. Now, but yeah, there aren't too many misogynist tropes. I guess I can imagine the audience is maybe meant to be on the side of, I'm sorry, is his name Luca, the guy who dies from, it seems like a heart attack. The when he says to her that, she must be, he basically says she's stupid for, you know, yeah, she explains her philosophy basically, and yeah, I think, the audience is probably supposed to, I don't know, I just thought the guy's kind of being an ass to her. There's really no reasons that, but, and once again, I don't know if I'm supposed to take the following from the movie, but it did kind of make me think about how, for a number of men, they feel bad about going to sex workers, and so as soon as they have had sex with them, they get really kind of hostile towards the sex worker. And yeah, I felt like it was basically a case of that, and I don't know if that was what the writers intended, or maybe it was them taking pot shots. I don't know. I don't know. I have way too little frame of reference for the writers of this. I respect their, what's the word, legacy, but I really don't know. I've heard, you know, Dario Argento has been called misogynist, and I don't know enough to comment on it now. But yeah, and sometimes the women are made to be like useless in movies. That's not really. I mean, the certainly the aunt character helps. She helps the cop, although that doesn't end up going. The Boris ends up beating the cop, but she helps the cop. She helps Sonia, including teaching her how to sew and this whole thing. And if I understood that correctly, yeah, and she helps. Okay, is his name Andrea? Maybe the journalist. I think I'm just gonna call him journalist. Helps positively identify Boris there at the end. So yeah, the several of the female characters play a significant role, and Sonia, helps. If Sonia hadn't let the journalist into the wax museum, he wouldn't have been able to take those pictures that proved that these are dead bodies. So yeah, let's see. And yeah, and in a lot of these movies, the women are depicted as not being strong. I feel like Sonia, I mean, certainly she ultimately she shows some strength. Yes, she is, she faints when she sees the recreation of the murder of her mother and the mother's lover, but that is fairly understandable. She was a kid at the time, and it's a very realistic recreation, and she didn't know that that was what she was going to see. It's not like he told her, "I'm going to show you a recreation of, I mean, yeah." So, and after that, once she suspects Boris, she goes to this dinner with him, and she's basically sitting there trying to think of, how can I determine if he's she's looking for the metal hand, basically. And she comes up with, once they, what's it called, toast. Once they toast with wine, rather than whining about someone's toast, she spills some wine on the glove, and immediately, like, quickly pulls it off and promises she's going to clean it for him, which, I mean, obviously he does realize what's going on, but it's a pretty decent, like, if she walked into the room and immediately demanded he show his hands, that might not get much of a result. So she, that was very, she's very clever there, and she manages to keep from, she's not like panicking, despite believing that she's face to face with the man who murdered her mother. So, and let's see, yeah, and so one way that women are, yeah, not treated so well in horror movies is that they're sexualized against their will and or only there for that purpose. And yeah, this one hits, several of the sex workers are only there for the gratuitous, nudity and sexuality. And let's see, there's the chair where they're strapped down. They're being sexualized against their will. I'm not going to go into right now whether or not you can talk about an Italian prostitute in the year 1912, whether they had, I mean, they obviously didn't have a lot of, if they're working as a sex worker, they probably don't, for a lot of women, that was a last resort. So, you can talk about how much they are consenting to that, but I'm not going to go too much into that here. The See, I don't personally think that I don't, hypothetically, if the blonde sex worker was the only sex worker we saw, then I wouldn't be, you know, she's not only there for that, and the same for Sonia. Both of them are sexualized, but you know, Sonia appears to like, not from right away, but she does eventually like Andrea, and yeah, they have sex. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, the although, obviously part of the reason it's there is so they can have Boris spying on it, but the the blonde sex worker, yeah, there's, the sexual, you know they have some stuff there for just completely gratuitously, but her, she's, in addition to the sexuality and her eventually becoming a victim herself, she's the one, she helps out with information, and she's one of the, with she talks to Andrea and gives some information, and the let's see, what's the word, the when she disappears, Andrea uses that to further investigate, so hypothetically, if you removed her from the story, there's stuff, you have to replace her with someone else or rewrite the story, and that's how you know a character is important. If you can't take them out of the story without having to rewrite stuff, whereas like the fact that there's the scene in, where these young men are surrounded by sex workers, that scene could have been set somewhere else. That's gratuitous. But let's see, and I also appreciate, when he says he just wants to talk, and excuse me, she realizes that, he wants information about Luca. She's like, how much is that information worth to you? She's smart about it, instead of just immediately, although there's probably some people who read that as like her being greedy or something. Anyway, let's see. And yes, so horror, it's important in horror not to overexpose the threat. And I think this one does a pretty good job of it. You know, it we see a lot of people be attacked for a, considering the running time. I've seen movies that are longer than this that have less victims, but we don't see the face all that much. And I also appreciate, I mean, they managed to come up with a number of different, like, in the 1953 one, you have Vincent Price's regular face, and then the wax mask comes off. She hits it with her hands until it cracks, and then you see the burn face underneath. And Fatalist points out in his House of Wax review that it was kind of silly that apparently the wax mask moves. He can talk and it not look weird. But anyway, yeah. So this one, okay. So you've got Boris's normal face. You've got his burned face from when he fell into the wax, the burning wax. Then you've got the black sort of completely face covering mask. Then you have the skeleton, and he also wears other people's faces as masks. So that's five different versions. Where the original had two. So that's you know, that points for creativity. I really appreciate it that, you know, when you see someone be attacked, you don't know which you're going to say. And when the little boy is attacked, you only do see the. I don't even think you see his. Do you even see his eyes? It's basically just, you know, he's got the big the collar that goes up. He's got the black hat and the, yeah, you know, and you even have this sort of POV which is like tinted red. Is that like a Terminator thing? Because there at the end he's a metal skeleton. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, that was a little. I don't know exactly what the, yeah. Anyway, and yeah, I think the movie is quite suspenseful. The It would have been easy for it to just be a gore fest, and I don't think there's something wrong with making horror movies that are just gore fests. Not every horror movie needs to have suspense. I personally tend to prefer the ones that have suspense, but I don't think it's a right or wrong thing. It's, you know, I think it's a good idea to decide what you want your movie to be and then go for that instead of like trying to, you know, I've seen movies that try to kind of do. I'm not saying you have to choose between gore and suspense, but there's there are some movies that only go for gore, some movies that only go for suspense, and then there are these movies that, you know, and there are the movies that balance it, but then there's these movies that for a lot of it it's all suspense or it's all gore, and then like at the end we'll have some of the other, you know, and it's like this is that's not gonna work at this point. You know, you pretty much, you know, you focused on the other one this whole time. You can't now do as, you know. Now let's see. I got this movie on sale, so anything I was saying this is not out of bitterness. I also do not feel like the movie wasted my time. Nobody forced me to watch it or to make this video. It's not that I'm upset at how this compares to, you know, the 1953 one, or, you know, what I know about Phantom. And let's see. Yeah, I don't have any kind of personal vendetta against anyone who worked on making it. To the best of my ability, the negative things I say in this are fair criticisms based on budget, when it came out, what it was trying to achieve, etc. Now, I watched, you know, my DVD did not come with very many special features. I don't have the one with. I've read about other people having like a load of special features, and you know they sound cool. I haven't watched those. I've Let's see, the just a real quick. Basically, it has this featurette, and it has this bit of like makeup effects and a photo gallery. Oh, so that's it. Now, I first watched this in the year 2010. I'm not 100% certain if I have watched it between then and now. If it's possible that I have. If so, it's like once or twice. And I watched it today, you know, pretty much right before hitting record. And my making jokes in this should not be taken as me thinking the thing I'm joking about is actually bad, or me wanting to make light of a subject. I simply find it very difficult not to MST3K and overanalyze everything I watch. Now, let's see. Right, so that brings us into the first section. Notes taken while watching. So, let's see. On a scale of 1 to 10, I give this a solid 7 wax figure making monsters out of 10. And let's see, that is, yeah, that's both you know, if I were a film critic, that's what I would rate it, and it's also my personal rating. Yeah. I like the opening where we pan from the fireworks celebrating New Year's Eve in Paris to the gory, bloody aftermath of the murders. And I really see that's I do love the style, the very, like, so many people would have just cut from one, but we first we see the fireworks and then we pan across, we see one body, pan in, I guess dolly into the other room with another corpse, yeah, very nicely done. And we see a little of the science used for the wax and such. And yeah, the young men sit and talk about fear. The guy dares him to spend a night at the wax museum. I appreciate that it is like, I had forgotten exactly how it went, and in like reviews they just mention, oh, one guy dares another guy, but no, they're having a discussion, like they it's, I guess it would be nice if the rest of the movie really went into, but they're having a discussion. The I think Lucas says that it's a, like, basically it's a question of constitution. If you're tough, you're not afraid, and you shouldn't be afraid because it's irrational, basically, he says. And one of the other guys says, well, that's easy for you to say, you have an easy life. Imagine if you had to spend a night in the wax museum. And he agrees to it. And yeah, and I'm sorry, I don't remember her name, but the blonde sex worker agrees to be the witness to confirm that he went into the wax museum after dark. And yeah, I really appreciate that she's actually important to the plot. It's not just, you know the let's get a naked woman into the movie so that, door handles unlocked, shouldn't be that easy to do this. Don't plan for intruders beforehand. I like that the guy isn't immediately attacked when he goes into the wax museum. We actually see how scary it is to be there when, yeah, be there alone, be there after dark. Now, and I do appreciate, like, even near the end of the movie, we still have scenes of just dark figures, walking through the wax museum whilst, yeah, near the end, it's Sonia trying to hide inside the wax museum. You know, I really appreciate this. I've seen other horror movies that were directed by effects people, and they really didn't seem to, like. I swear I'm not going to spend forever talking about Alien vs. Predator Requiem. Clearly, they're there to, they want to shoot. That's kind of a spoiler. They want to film gore executed by, aliens and predators. That's what they're there for. And I'm not saying, I get that that's part of why, everyone watching is in part there for that. But that movie could have worked harder on suspense, and there are times where it can be sort of suspenseful, but it's very clear that that's not really what the directors are interested in. They're there to do cool gore, and it is pretty cool gore. But this, you know, uh, Sergio Stivaletti, I'm gonna go ahead and guess is how I pronounce that. He clearly did appreciate, this was supposed to be okay, I'm gonna try Lucio Fulci's last movie, or I don't know if they meant for it to be his last movie, but they wanted it to be another movie directed by him, but he died before the yeah, before they started. I guess while they were in pre-production, I want to say is what yeah. And Stivaletti, I've never watched a Fulci film. Sorry. Maybe I will at some point. But the from what I understand, he really cared about suspense and atmosphere, and Stivaleti respects that. You know, the movie, it would not be difficult to make this movie more about gore than, you know, than, yeah, to remove the suspense and put in more gore. Like, for example, when, you know, when you have scenes of these, you know, yeah, the for example, when Sonya, well, I guess there's sort of gore at the end when she accidentally breaks that one wax figure, but the the part where she's hiding and the dark figure walks past. I mean, hypothetically, it could have been that instead of just walking past, we could have gotten like a full shot of him walking, and he's maybe like carrying body parts or something. You know, they don't do that. You know, in general, the I mean, really, you can tell that the Boris cares deeply about the craft, and the two assistants. It is really only two, isn't it? The Alex and the other guy, the guy with the distinctive scar. They work really hard to please him, and yeah, I mean, basically, when there's gore in this movie, it tends to be as they're working on making one of the wax figures, or if someone accidentally, you know, yeah, if someone not working on the wax figure, like doing investigation, accidentally knocks something over that then falls and, you know, shatters, and it's maybe someone's head or something, but it's not really, because the thing is, the director does want to show gore. You have to balance that against, the characters causing violence. Do they want, are they interested in leaving a gory mess? Because some, yeah, there are characters that are interested in leaving, something shocking and horrifying behind. But then there are others who, yes, they'll do something extreme, but they like to later dress it up. They want to make it artistic, or they want to hide the body or something, but and yeah, from start to finish, you get in this that, I mean, really, one of the only times that Boris very intentionally causes a huge gory mess and just leaves it there is when he gets revenge on his wife and the wife's lover. Other than that, where he twists off the hand and he rips out the heart, which is obviously symbolic. You took away my hands and you broke my heart, and other than that, he is basically, yeah, it looks fine. He is basically always trying to, yeah, for example, again, if they wanted gore and they weren't that serious about making it, about this guy who wants, I mean, he wants it to look, look basically immaculate. Imagine if instead of like using a syringe on the boy, imagine if instead, like, he reached out and crushed part of his body or something. That wouldn't work for his purposes, so that's not what they do in the movie. you know so yeah, let's see. And Boris is immediately stricken by Sonya. Really creepy as the assistant touches Anna's face as she, right after she, she's there to beg for money, and yeah, yeah, that's, and let's see. Yeah, and a figure in black gives the boy cotton candy. Man, when they say don't take candy from strangers, they were not kidding. You might end up being abducted, subjected to medical experiments, and transformed into a wax dummy. And Boris creeps over Sonia some more, and the assistant drops one of the dead bodies, and a hand falls off. And Boris is, and yeah, the assistant really quickly covers up so Sonia doesn't see, because she'd be like, "Why is that statue bleeding?" Just and Sonia's like, "Oh, it's okay, it's just a wax figure," and Boris just freaks out. The Boris actor did a great job. That is a very strong performance, and I've read that he's in other Giallo and, or sorry, Jali, right? Jali when it's plural and Giallo when it's singular. If I'm gonna watch more Jali, I think there's a pretty good chance I'm gonna seek out the ones he's in, because wow, he is really just the so creepy and so like compelling. Like he's such a commanding presence. When he just she's like, no, she's trying to calm down the assistant. She's like, don't feel bad. Everybody makes mistakes and it's not a big deal. And he's like, they're not just wax figures. It's just this big, and that's another place where it's like, would she really show up for work the next day? Wouldn't she be like, it's been something. I'm gonna get another job because you are freaking me out. Just that's. But the movie's not supposed to be completely, credible. That's not. The ending makes that completely clear once again. So anyway, but yeah, that's legitimately scary. Like you're sitting there watching, and it's like, is he gonna murder her for saying that the figures are not that big a deal? Just yeah. I appreciate how scared Bors's assistants are of him, and you know, yeah, it is very convincing that just like yeah, and with that you also have this thing of well, why would they be working for him if they're scared of him? But I'm not 100% certain about the guy with the scar, but it definitely seems like Alex has like he's mentally ill himself, and this is something he does to, this is sadly one of the movies that demonize the mentally ill as dangerous, but that's what's going on with Alex. I feel like absolutely exquisite filming and staging on the shadow of the hooded man going in to grab Anna. Just the you see the needle approaching from, and again, this is, if the director was only about gore, he would not bother to get. It took planning to work out the lighting and the shadow play and the whole. It just like, is that an Italian horror film, a horror thing, or were they like doing an homage to, like, I feel like, isn't that more of a German horror thing, like an expressionist, like a old school, like we're talking like I want to say 1920s, 1930s German horror with like shadows and just and these harsh, yeah, just I don't know, maybe it's something that they also do in Italian horror. Yeah, I gotta make sure, because not all Italian horror is giallo, right? Because giallo is when it's like about a murderer and this kind of thing. But I mean, I guess like the Italian zombie movies are probably not considered giallo. Yeah, I gotta remember not to just use it as a, that's kind of like, you know, let's see. Oh, is it? No, it's still gone. I mean, that's essentially like calling a slasher movie a murder mystery or detective story or something. So no, the okay, maybe slasher movie is not a good example. It's like calling, Dawn of the Dead a detective story or something. No, they're not just interchangeable terms. but yeah, that the just absolutely, like, if there was one thing from this movie that I would remember for the artistry, I think it would be that. Like, if you ask me in 10 years, if I don't watch this movie again, and in 10 years, I think I'll remember the shadow of the syringe going close, and then then we see the metallic hand grabbing Anna's face, covering her mouth. Covering someone else's mouth is already really creepy, but they add the fact that it's a metallic hand, and the doctors start doing an autopsy and then realize the kid is still alive. That's wow. They really went to work thinking of what would be some incredibly horrifying things to show in this movie. How do we get under the audience's skin in less than 95 minutes? And the idea of, like, I mean, thankfully they didn't get far. They start making one cut and the blood makes it clear that her heart must still be beating or she would not be bleeding like this. This is not something you would see on someone who's been dead for hours. There would not be so much fresh blood, so, but that is, and again, if they were just about the gore, it would have been that they, like, cut really deep and blood pours out and she wakes up and gasps for air or something. But no, that's not what it's about. They want just the creepy realization that she is still alive. But yeah, let's see. I don't know if I've made it completely clear, but I do want to say I have no problem with movies that do just go for gore and just want a lot of gore. There are movies that, you know, as someone who loves The Thing from 1982, I'm never gonna criticize a movie for having too much gore. At most, I might say it has too much gore for what it's trying to do. But the kind of, yeah, I really appreciate, or maybe if the gore, not all gore is equally effective and such. But no, the yeah, the gore here is, yeah, for example, this doesn't have the kind of gore that you see in, I can't believe I'm blanking on his name, George A. Romero's, trilogy of the dead. Yeah, and I think some of the later ones also have. The three I love are the trilogy of the dead, but I have also watched, let's see, Diary and Land of the Dead, but those are not great. I'm not intending on reviewing those. If you want to know about them, I thought that, let's see, I off the shelf reviews and DSD can do really solid reviews of those two movies. But the yeah, the kind of gore you get in those movies, especially in Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead, in part because effects had, you could do really detailed gore. You couldn't really when they were making the very first one. But yeah, some of the gore you get there, I'm not saying it's excessive, but I don't think stuff like that would have worked as well here because that's not really, yeah, that the Boris and the assistants aren't really trying to do something really, messed up. Whereas, in those movies, like, if zombies want to eat you, they're not gonna be, like, really careful and polite about it. They're gonna rip you apart, and that's what those movies show. And yeah, and the reporter tries to talk to Anna, but she's understandably very traumatized. I'm not going to claim the jump scare of Sonia waking up from a nightmare didn't get me, but I did find it a little weird that it came when, it was like a smash cut from Anna smiling for having her picture taken, but, you know, yeah, it didn't smash cut from something scary, but I will say it worked well in part due to how Anna was about to have her picture taken, and she's like she wipes her eyes with the tears, and she does a nice you know affable smile, and we see the well, not this, I guess it's more of a it's the thing, old, it's a camera from back then, from 1912. That's something I really do appreciate about this, that they did make it a period picture. Obviously you have stuff that wouldn't be in you've got the I saw someone call it the lab of Technicolor chemicals, and it's very true. Technicolor is the exact right word to use there. The so yeah, let's see, or where was I? The crap. Where was I going with that? The I don't remember exactly where the okay. So the and yeah, I hopefully I'll think of it later. But anyway, yeah, the she's she's smiling and she's relaxed, so the audience was not expecting a jump scare. So that was yeah, and yeah, and Alex and Sonia talk about Boris and Alex's background, and then the other assistant comes and gets the wax dummy, and the audience can recognize the dummy is the boy from earlier, and I appreciate how by then a little time has passed, not not a huge amount of screen time, but certainly it has been days in movie time, so yeah, they didn't just have it ready like the very next day. Now, and very gory, grisly aftermath, sorry, flashback to the attack that we've already seen the aftermath of. And the sex worker goes to the meeting place, and we see the broken mirrors, very creepy and atmospheric. And we later see that this is. Wait, is. I think so. I feel like. Wasn't that where he went, or is that just a very similar place? Because when he was. Wait. Oh, right. Sorry. Yeah, I'm. That's right. Yeah. See, the all the broken mirrors, that's from when he and I like that. I feel like that was a good way to, she notices that all these mirrors are broken and so does the audience, and we get like a really bad feeling, but we don't know exactly why the mirrors were broken until later. Once we see the flashback to, Boris with the excuse me, yeah, Boris falling into the vat, excuse me, and because yeah, that is, I'm almost 100% certain that's the same place, because you have the little hand mirror that he picks up and sees himself. Nice Batman, reference too. That's excellent, and he smashes it because he can't stand looking at him. Excuse me, looking at himself in the mirror anymore, and we don't see that he smashes. I don't think we see him smashing the other mirrors, but obviously he did that after. I really appreciate that we see all the broken mirrors before we see the flashback. It's a good, again, suspense. The because immediately our mind goes to, why would someone smash all these mirrors, and is that person dangerous? Because the moment you see a sign of violence, and again, imagine if like if the director was all about gore, maybe instead of finding broken mirrors, I mean, okay, ultimately she does also find something really gory. Was that like a was that a heart from like either a human or an animal or something? I'm not 100% certain. I'm not gonna lie. There were a couple of times where I could not really tell what the what exact, but it's fine. I think it was supposed to be a heart at least, but you know, it could easily have been that instead of broken mirrors, she finds like body parts or something, and you know, yeah, that does make it less. It makes it harder to believe that she would stay for as long as she does ultimately do. But I've seen movies where horror movie characters will go into a place and find body parts and still just go around looking at stuff instead of leaving immediately. Anyway, now, but yeah, I quite like the scene. I really appreciate the scenes of suspense. She goes in, she's got this letter that tells her to go to the meeting place, and then she finds all these broken mirrors, and we can tell that there's something. And again, I appreciate, obviously the audience knows that you know there's a killer, so we immediately know the killer is going to be there. But she doesn't. She has a sense of self-preservation. She sees all these broken mirrors, and it also looks kind of abandoned. It doesn't look like a place where you meet someone, you know. So she starts to leave, and then she, yeah, actually, yeah. Before I get into exactly what happens, I appreciate also we see this disfigured face behind her, but then she walks forward, and we're no longer seeing the face, so the attack doesn't happen right away, but the audience knows that there's someone right there. Very suspenseful. I really appreciate. They did a really great job, and she does. She starts to leave the area, but she accidentally dropped, like, what's it called, like her purse or something. So obviously she has to go back. She can't afford to lose all the money the yeah, she's not really in a position to leave all that money behind. And yeah, so and then she's hit with a syringe on the way back from there. I'm not sure if that's implying that there were two attackers or that he somehow managed to get all the way over there in time. It almost must be that there were just two of them, and that makes perfect sense because there's Boris, there's two assistants, so it could easily be that there were two of them. Yeah, two of those three were there. And not only is she strapped to the chair, which is already a really messed up, disturbing situation, but the guy also uses the chair to put her in a specific pose and then inject her with the chemicals. So movie is managing to fit in a lot of really disturbing things into just one scene, one situation, and I really appreciate that. That's the thing with horror movies is the more recent your horror movie, the more it's going to be compared to, and especially if you're going for like really incredibly disturbing material and stuff that's really gory or something. The in so people are going to expect more, and yeah, they managed to. I feel like they must have sat down and like brainstormed how many scary things can we fit into a single thing. So the yeah, she's strapped into a chair, then she's made to pose as I mean that really says that Boris basically already considers her one of the wax dump. I mean, it's easier to pose her before he does the chemical thing to her, so it's incredibly creepy. That's a really great, yeah. And let's see, yeah, and injecting of chemicals, and we're never really told what this is. We just have some idea about, we kind of see what it does, but we don't know what's in it. So that, all of these different things, and when Anna was, yeah, I mean, ultimately she wasn't kidnapped, but when the guy tries to kidnap her, you've got the syringe. You see it through the first. You see the shadow, and she sees the shadow. Imagine sitting there in your bed and just seeing this horrifying shadow slowly creeping. And so yeah, you're being grabbed from your bed. She's a kid. The victim is a kid. The syringe, the dark figure, and the whole thing. Just, yeah. Now, yeah, and with the syringe thing, the sex worker ends up looking like a wax figure. And as he attaches the wax, uh, yeah, the wax eyes, we can clearly see her still moving her actual eyes. Once again, really disturbing. Just the it's already really messed up to like kill someone and then turn them into a wax figure, but for them to still be alive, which, I saw someone point out that makes no sense though. But if you're willing to follow the movie there, that is incredibly scary. The idea that, I mean, basically, it's yes, we're told the specific thing that means that, the person in the under the wax is still alive. That's the injection that is also given to Anna. Something that, what was it, that completely incapacitates the brain. I want to say they said it was something like that. And yeah, I mean, at that point, the would yeah, no, I think at that point you wouldn't move even like reflexively, and there's probably also some kind of something that all otherwise inhibits body movement. But yeah, just that's really. And Boris opens the door without ringing the bell by grabbing the bell. Boris sure does like creepily staring at people having sex. First, it's Alex having sex with sex workers. Now it's Sonia having sex with a journalist. And then we see what happened to Boris in this green tinted flashback. And the. I mean, by the end of the movie, Boris does want to make Sonia into a statue. For a while, he says that she's off limits. But I guess, is it maybe because she was willing to go against him, and that's, once you cross that, once you go there, he is. I'm not 100% sure. I'm not saying it's otherwise necessarily like inconsistent. It's, I may have missed something. And the journalist is told the sex worker, the blonde sex worker, is missing. And I appreciate, when you read reviews of this, if I didn't really remember too much of it. I honestly really got a sense that it was way less coherent than it is. It's really not. Reviews kind of make it sound just incoherent. You could say that there are things that are hard to believe, and there are characters making choices where you think, well, that's not the wisest course of action and such. But it makes sense that Luca goes in and spends the night, and then the blonde sex worker, you know, talks to people about that, and then she goes missing, and is that because Alex wanted her? Because he was the one. He, was she the one he was having, or was that a different sex worker? That might have been a different sex worker. I don't remember for sure. But yeah, the once the blonde sex worker goes missing, then I mean, Luca dying of a heart attack in the wax museum, that's not necessarily, that doesn't necessarily scream murder. That might be he died from, they talk about his heart was not strong enough to, and that's the thing. That is, there are people whose heart, I'm not sure it happens much more today, at least not in like developed countries and such, but back then I'm not sure that there was, other than they probably just tell the person try not to get too scared. I'm not sure that there was much they could do. The But today, I don't know. I'm guessing there's probably something. I don't know enough about it to say, but anyway, would it be a pacemaker today? I'm not sure. Anyway, the thing, yeah, that doesn't scream murder, but it is something that people talk about, and so the journalist wants to do a story about that because it's there's that's interesting, and once the blonde sex worker goes missing, he's like, that's weird, that's, and the yeah, and the like, he talks to the, I wasn't sure if that was the madam of the brothel or if that was another sex worker, but the she says, I think it's a cop who says, well, didn't she just, maybe she quit or something, but the the madam or the other sex worker says, she explains why that doesn't make sense, and the excuse me, and I also appreciate that it is sadly very true that when sex workers go missing, often the police don't take it very seriously, and you know yeah, the journalist is like, there's something going on here, and so he further investigates. Now, and the journalist recognizes the missing, the blonde sex worker as a, you know what's it called, wax statue in the museum, and the journalist is like, no, they get inspiration from real people, so which is also, that's a I mean, that's a much more plausible explanation than they kidnapped someone and turned her into a wax sculpture. It's just, I mean, that is the what's it called, Madame Tussauds, the famous wax museum. I don't remember exactly how to pronounce the name. That has plenty of recreations of real people, so now. And yeah, Sonia sees they recreated the murder of her mother. And I like how, as she leaves at night, it's completely clear that the someone is like watching her. She's being followed by someone. I appreciate the period accurate detail of numerous people. It's numerous poor people, several of whom beg for money. You've got the old man begging Sonia for money at night. The girl was begging one of the assistants. The boy tried to steal from the guy doing the puppet show, and Sonia is nearly fed to pigs, which again, just wow, that's a horrifying concept. That really, yeah, they really managed to come up with, yeah. I saw someone point out in their review that that's barely mentioned for the rest of the movie, and that is kind of true. I feel like it wouldn't have been bad to have just a little bit, like, I think the only reference to it after that, I mean, it does lead to something. It's not just completely gratuitous. It leads to, apparently it was Alex doing it, and it leads to Boris beating him for it, which leads directly to, you know, not immediately, but it does lead to Alex, you know, betraying Boris. And there's, you know, when Sonia goes to work the next day, she has to like pull down her sleeve to cover the blood, which it makes a lot of sense that it didn't, like, a cut like that would not heal overnight. That's, you know, and she doesn't want to take time off from work because you know, she's worried about, you know, maybe he's going to fire her if she's difficult. And the cop from 12 years ago shows up, and he's been watching over Sonia. And I honestly, when the let's see, I mean, the thing with the cop, does it really lead to? Does the cop maybe talk to the cop is the one who tells Sonia that the killer had a metal hand, or what? They certainly they talk about it. I'm pretty sure. Anyway, nice detail that the aunt forgets to turn on the light since she doesn't need it for herself. And I like the way, like, the phrasing, at least in the subtitles, was, I live in a world of darkness. Sometimes I forget it's not like that for everyone else. That's a good, yeah. Let's see. And the detective points out to Boris the metal hand was kept secret, so only he and the killer know about that. You know, they didn't, that story, that part of the story didn't make it into the papers. So Boris reveals the, yeah, you shouldn't keep souvenirs from a murder, to quote uh, another movie. And, you know, the cop and Sonia want to arrest Boris, and yeah, I really love the very tense dinner scene of Sonia trying to figure out if he is the killer, and there's, if he's hiding a metal hand, and she's trying to figure out, should she eat something that he's providing for her, should she drink something that he, you know, so, and just really really clever with the spill. And, you know, once, you know, she's surprised to not find a metal hand there. She really does believe that, you know, or did until that point believe it was him. And then he takes the other, you know, the other glove off immediately to, you know, basically prove that neither of his hands are metal. And then later we find out, you know, they are, but there's wax covering the metal most of the time. But it's a great detail because we also saw a metal hand when Anna was attacked. You know, we haven't actually seen normal human hands when people are being attacked. You know, it's the claw or it's black gloves, which that's a good way to cover a claw, you know. So yeah, I really appreciated the, it's a really nice sort of, you don't realize that there could be, you know, something appearing to be skin covering the metal hand until pretty close to the end. And we see someone walking into the hotel, and the person at the desk recognizes him as the, you know, the detective, and he's like, here's your key, and he walks up, and we see that his key, you know, was that the other guy's key, that the detective's key was already in the lock, and then he pushes it, something like that. And then the, you know, he walks closer to him, and we see that he has the same face as the cop. And so it's the first time that the movie shows someone using, the a mask of someone else's face, and it's about an hour and 10 minutes in, so more than 2/3 of the way through is the first time we see that. So because that is a pretty, I mean, ultimately it doesn't actually, I guess it's basically there to set up the ending when he switches, when he puts on a different face mask. But yeah, it's really creepy. It's got to be one of the scariest things in the world to be approached by someone who looks exactly like you. That really is like, this can't be happening. This is not, and he gets out the gun and he shoots several times in like the chest, and the guy doesn't stop moving at all. That's, yeah, really, which, once you see that he's like this metal skeleton, yeah. And the record player stops because of the blood on the record. And did no one hear the gunshots though? Or was he just really quick in getting out of there? I mean, it can't be that the record player covered the sound of the gunshots. That's, yeah. I shouldn't think too much about it. And Sonia hides in the wax museum and accidentally knocks the tube out and spills some of the chemical. And she takes off the fake eye and sees the moving eye underneath, and yeah. And we see the scarred up face, near Sonia, and then she's grabbed. And let's see. Yeah, I mean, that's when, I guess that's supposed to be Boris. So when did he change his mind about attacking her? Or is that supposed to be Alex? I feel like the ending raises more questions than I think it meant to. But then I don't think I'm the first person to point that out. No, and we see the journalist processing the photos he took of the wax figures, and he realizes they're dead bodies, and that's a great. I think that is, I think that might make sense that you could see that from the yeah, while doing the processing. I think I don't know enough about photography. And the journalist confronts Boris, and just as I'm about to give him crap for going alone, turns out Sonia's aunt is right there, and she recognizes his voice, and the two of them must have gone together, right? It would make no sense. Yeah, yeah, they must have. There's no way. It would be a ridiculous coincidence if they just happened to both be there at the same time. But and the journalist goes investigating and gets knocked out because that's the. I if I had to criticize one thing, I do think that the movie, I think there are a few too many times where a character goes into a place, looks around, and then is captured by, either Boris or one of his. I don't have a problem with how many victims there are for, the length, which it's a, I mean, ultimately Anna doesn't end up being a victim, but you've got the boy, you've got the blonde sex worker. Sonia nearly becomes a victim twice. And let's see. I mean, certainly the aunt ends up being a victim, but it's basically convenience. They don't really go out to get her as such. But yeah, there are a lot of people caught and used as the, yeah. But I think maybe one or two of these scenes should just be cut. the it does seem very silly that the journalist goes alone. He knows that I mean, he's literally going to confront Boris. He believes that Boris can, and I think, yeah, okay, he gave the photos to the police, and I get that, like, maybe they couldn't follow him immediately or something, but it's just him and the aunt, who, I'm sorry, but she is blind. She's not going to be much help if there's a fight. You know, it just seems. Does he have no friends? Okay, hypothetically, if someone woke me up late at night, I might be kind of angry with them. But if they told me, if you follow me, we might save someone's life. I mean, at that point, it'd be like, yeah, okay, let's go. You know, I just, I mean, I realize that I'm not sure that I can think of a character he would have gone to. I don't think we see him have any friends, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't have any. But yeah, it's the horror movie thing. You know, they wanted it to work out like that. Now, and the aunt finds the wall of masks, and we see, you know, yeah, there's the mask for the cop, there's one for the journalist, one for Alex, and one for Boris. So, and Sonia is in the chair, strapped down, and you know, I'll grant that it wasn't necessary to get two topless, you know, for one movie to have two scenes of topless women being strapped into this chair. However, now we know what's going to happen if she doesn't get out of there in time. You know, and actually, yeah, and by this point, okay, so I'm just gonna try to. I'm not 100% certain I understood what happened, but she knocked the tube out. I'm pretty sure the tube was providing the fluid that kept her, like, paralyzed. Or maybe Paolo lies, but power lines, that's it. But then it's like there was this effect. I didn't. Real quick, I do like the shot of, like, she's apparently been, like, stitched, like her back, I guess, was cut up and stitched back together. Just that was really disturbing to see. And but then she, like, kind of collapses and sort of melts, and it looks like there wasn't still a skeleton under there, or is it the like part of it just melted under the. I don't know. I feel like the ending just really raises a lot of questions. Until I saw that, I assumed that it was just a regular dead body under there. But then the moment that the tube goes out and enough of the fluid has come out, she kind of the figure collapses, and yeah, it looks like she was melting. It looked like there wasn't flesh left under there, and I'm not sure I even really saw. I guess maybe skeleton at the very end there, but it just. Then how could we clearly saw the eye move when the tube came out? But yeah, so we know now that in addition to it rendering her immobile, eventually the process will completely destroy her body, as we saw it had done with the blonde, or is that only what happens if the tube gets knocked? Possibly, but certainly it's not good. So the yeah, we get that, and yeah, I'm not gonna claim that it's, obviously part of the reason it's there is to have more topless women, shots of topless women in the movie. I guess ultimately there aren't that many individual topless women. I guess there's the sex worker that Alex has sex with. There's the blonde sex worker, and there's Sonia. I'm not sure the other sex workers actually get topless. So anyway, it is gratuitous to have both of them be topless women, but the fact that they have two scenes of people strapped into the chair. And I do appreciate, I mean, when I saw it with the blonde sex worker there, I was like, get her out, someone rescue her, because I cared about her. The movie had given us enough scenes and enough and had given her enough lines. She had enough scenes, she had enough screen time, she had enough lines. She's a thinking person. She's got the philosophy about how the why the sex work makes sense, and she, you know, yeah, I don't think she's not supposed to be like an ignorant character. She's, she's she's shown to be clever. I gotta stop saying she's. She is shown to be clever when she asks for money in order to talk about Luca to the journalist. And yeah, I really appreciate that they, because ultimately the it is important that she be present for some of these things, but if they didn't care, they might not have given her a personality. The I've seen horror movies where there are women that have way more screen time. Some of them even have way more lines, but I could not tell you what their personality was like. So yeah, the let's see, and Boris goes, starts giving the villain speech, and among other things, he talks about how his wax figures are making these people immortal now. So yeah, basically, he was pushed into wax, not intentionally. The woman and her, sorry, Boris's wife and her lover did not mean for Boris to get hurt, but he ended up getting pushed into the wax, in part because his wife was upset that he only cared about the wax dummies. Now he's far more obsessed with the idea of wax dummies, so it's one of many stories where an obsession with something turns you into a monster. And the journalist and Boris struggle, and Boris's face gets melted, and yeah, and Alex sets Boris on fire, and the wax museum itself catches on fire. The skeleton is quite ridiculous, but it is intensely creepy looking. The red eyes and the teeth, and it just, and it's very obviously a tribute to, Terminator with the, yeah. And while obviously in Terminator that makes much more sense than, excuse me, than it does here, but excuse me, I appreciate that they did, clearly they understand why, the like making, they didn't just copy. It's not the exact same design. They changed it slightly. Like, even if I didn't, I've watched the Terminator quite a few times by now. Even if I, even if years passed between, and you just very briefly showed me, if you showed me a picture of either the T800 or the Boris T800, I would be able to tell them apart. If you showed me a picture of one of them and asked me to say which of them it is, I'd be able to tell them apart. I quite respect that. And Alex decapitates the skeleton, and then let's see. Yeah, so the ending, we see Alex go into the basement and take off the Alex face with the skeleton under there, and then put on the Boris face. So the ending implies that Boris like somehow managed to switch places with Alex. Like they had a fight. We see the start of the fight and we see the end of the fight. I guess in between those two, he's supposed to somehow have changed place, or were they, or were? Hold on a second. I guess maybe that's not Boris strapping Sonya down. That's Alex, since Boris doesn't want to, and he talks as if he is Boris, but it's not like he's like if he gave some piece of information that only Boris would know, then it'd be like, but yeah. And then when he gets out, just for show, just in case someone can hear, Boris wearing Alex's face attacks Alex wearing Boris's face, claiming that he's doing it because Boris hit Alex. I mean, I guess you could kind of, because the very ending either shows that Boris survived and he was posing as Alex there near the end, or that Alex is in a similar situation to Boris, and that he poses as Boris there at the very end. After, yeah, it's got to be one of those. I feel like it. I'm not sure it could. There's really a third option that I can think of right now, at least. So I'm not gonna lie. I don't hate the idea that both of them posed as the other, and then and what it was actually, it wasn't Alex killing Boris to stand up for himself and to get even with him for the murder. I'm sorry, for the beating, not the murder. Yeah, murder him for the beating. It was Boris killing Alex so that he could get away, and also killing him for attacking Sonya. I don't hate that. I don't. I I wouldn't have minded if the movie made it a little clearer, because at the end of the day, I'm sorry, but the moment you have a character take off their face and put on someone else's face, right after we've seen another character, another character's face come off, I'm sorry, but at that point you have to realize we don't know which of them is which. If the yeah. Anyway, yeah, I kind of like that. I feel like that works. That was, yeah. In fact, maybe Alex put on Boris's face to have an easier time getting to Sonya. And then the real Boris comes down and sees that one of his Boris faces is missing, realizes that that's what Alex is doing, puts on an Alex face. Yeah, I that is, in that case, basically Boris almost, I mean, I guess not intentionally, but he allows, let's go with, the wax museum burns to the ground, but he's not going to be able to keep getting away with what he's been doing. So, yeah. Yeah, that basically makes sense. But let's see. I do think the fact that both of them turn out to be skeletons under there, I'm sorry, I feel like that's just going a little bit too far. I like, again, like I said, if you're gonna go that far, then give me Freddy Krueger. Don't stop at that. I I'm sorry. I prefer the Vincent Price version where he has a scarred up face and he covers it with a mask, instead of the idea that, yeah, it's just a little, or yeah, if he turned out to be like, yeah, the let's see. So at the end, at the very end, he, yeah, let's go with that's Boris, has, yeah, whoever is there at the end is wearing Boris's face, even though he's really close to the others and could be seen, which would mean that he wouldn't be able to get away. So that's a bit of an unnecessary risk he's taking. I mean, why not just put on, let's see. I mean, I guess, let's, no, yeah, if he just kept Alex's face on, like, hypothetically, if after the wax museum burns to the ground, then, like, the police are like, where did the assistants go? That's not necessarily going to start a huge, and he could just change into a different face once he got to wherever he's going to, yeah, anyway. And at the very end of the end credits, there's some Darth Vader breathing, but that wasn't established as something that Boris or Alex did. So I don't. I want to give it points because it's creepy, and I like when movies reward you for sitting through the end credits. You know, I usually only do that for more recent movies if I expect there to be something at the end of the end credits or at the opening of the opening credits. The Yeah, I it was a good sound effect, and no one added it to IMDb under crazy credits, so I don't know. And yes, so the movie is about an hour and 32 minutes long without end credits, and an hour and 35 minutes long with end credits. And that was that section. So that brings us to notes taken before watching. Recently, I've been doing this thing where I open this section with, mentioning what else I've seen of the work of the starring actors and director, writer, and producers and such. I'm afraid I know very little about, you know, I I'm aware that this was originally written by Lucio Fulci, but I've never seen. I went through everything he's made. R.I.P. I haven't seen any of it. I'm sorry. And the story was written by Dario Argento, and was he maybe also a producer? I forget. I'm afraid that Argento is the only Italian horror I know at all. I think I've seen other Italian movies, but no other Italian horror movies. But I've seen a couple. They've made some. You know, yeah, they've made other movies that I have seen. I don't offhand remember. There's probably, I can imagine they maybe made some World War II movie that my dad liked and that he showed me. And once again, I have nothing against Italian filmmaking. I'm just not that familiar with it. It just happens to not be, when I went to buy horror movies, those weren't really the ones that the yeah, I guess I already betrayed. I used to go to physical places to buy movies, and there weren't really Italian horror movies in the horror section, or was it just that they didn't? Maybe the covers didn't catch my eye as much. Most horror movies I've watched are American, so now, but yeah, you know, I have watched three movies that Dario Argento directed. Mother of Tears, which I liked. It's possible that I'll review it at some point, but I'm afraid I haven't watched. I know, total heresy, but I haven't watched the other two. I'm aware that it's the third in the trilogy. He made three movies about I guess exactly what they're about is kind of a spoiler for some of those movies, so I'm just gonna say he made 3 movies that are related there, and I haven't seen the other 2. And I've heard they're supposed to be amazing, so I might watch them and then decide if I'm going to do videos on it. But I think Mother of Tears is a very effective movie. I'll grant that there are a couple of silly things in there, but and I'm not going to spoil it. But I found it very effective. I've watched it 3 times by now, I think, and each time it worked for me. And I watched. I want to say the title translates from Italian into "Do you like Hitchcock?" And I do, and that's why I watched it. I think I caught that on TV years ago, back when I actually watched TV. Yeah, I saw that there was a movie coming up on TV that was called "Do You Like Hitchcock?" and I was like, I'll watch that. That's definitely, and I'm afraid I don't remember very much of it, but I remember liking it, and I remember feeling like it was a very respectful homage to Hitchcock, and it's from like 2005, so we are talking quite a few years after Hitchcock died. I forget, did he maybe die in 1980 or something? So 25 years after, but that's something I've read, that Argento was very inspired by Hitchcock, and that is really really cool. So that's something that makes me want to watch more of his stuff. Excuse me. And I watched Phenomena from 1985. Not a fan. I don't. I think I just didn't really. Maybe if I watched it again, I would like it. I watched it many many years ago, and I don't know. It just wasn't really for me. And I have watched the Dario Argento edit of Dawn of the Dead from 1978. I don't like it quite as much. I do, I don't. Sometimes when I say that I don't like it as much as the original, people assume that I'm just worshiping the original. I think he did a good job on his edit of Dawn of the Dead. I would give it a good strong 7 out of 10. But overall, I think that movie is better. You know the original edit, I guess it's called, just, yeah, it's now, let's see. I probably did watch the original edit before Argento's edit. From what I recall, he tried to make it move a little faster and be a little more action, heavy. I'm just not sure. I think that the movie really needed that, but I realize it's not like the movie was taken away from George Romero. The two of them worked together on the movie, and Argento also did an edit of it. And if you get the movie on DVD, you can choose which of their edits to watch. And yeah, where I will never understand how people are fine with streaming, and how DVDs just, anyway. If you have the DVD, you can watch either of them, and I do think it's worth watching. You know, yeah. Now, let's see. Yeah, I guess I'm just really briefly going to say the original cut of the 1978 Dawn of the Dead, I would give a 10 out of 10. Now, let's see. Obviously, part of the appeal of the concept of these movies is that it is inherently creepy how lifelike wax figures can sometimes be. And honestly, there probably are people who actually believe that wax figures really are just human beings treated to appear to be wax figures, especially back when they were first starting to be made, which, at the time, you know, people believed more things that we today know are not true. I'm not saying I don't know for sure. It's possible that it has been done, that some people have at least tried to do that. But, wax figures are not, it just, like, if we want to be completely brutally honest, realistically, it's very, like, if you try, like, those dead bodies would reek. And I don't care what you do to them, when a body starts decaying, it starts to stink. And I don't know this from personal experience, but that's just, there's no way that someone would be able to pass off a dead body as a wax figure, no matter what, you know, what they covered the body with, or if they removed all the innards or whatever. It's just not possible. And it's, even if you could somehow get beyond the stench, and I don't see how you would be. I mean, I guess if you only showed people pictures of them, but at that point, why not just take pictures of people and pass around, but the moment someone's in the same room, they would be able to smell it. But even if you could, it's just not like, it would be extremely, like, the if a person disappeared and the police went looking and someone said there's a wax figure that looks very much like the person that's missing, that's a huge red flag. I'm not saying that they immediately bust down the door, but the person's gonna get caught eventually. That's just, and, yeah, but hopefully there's less people who still believe it now. There's definitely less people who believe it today than back then, but I would say, the Vincent Price movie utilizes it well, and this movie utilizes it well. Now, it gets a lot out of the creepiness of the frozen features of these figures, the statues. It's not only focused on brutality towards living people. Now, let's see. And that's, again, I really appreciate that they used a period setting, because hypothetically, let's say that it was contemporary. Let's say that in 1997 they put out a movie that claimed that in 1997, people would be super interested in a wax museum. Like, no, I'm not saying no one would go, but it's not gonna get, but in 1912, yeah, it would get a lot of attention. Especially if you know, they were these really detailed recreations of famous murders, and this kind of concept is, now, I can respect a movie early on shows what appears to be that the villain has a metal hand, and then the end reveals, no, his entire skeleton is metal. That, yeah, there's setup for it. I think the first time we see the metal hand is the flashback, about 35 minutes in or something, which is actually, it's a little interesting. There are reviews that describe it as that the opening is the brutal murder. So in their memory, they rearranged the scene order. And, I could totally understand remembering it as the first thing we see, because it is such it's a stunning scene. It really is deeply, deeply memorable. It is really creepy to imagine someone having a heart attack while trying to spend the night in a scary place on a dare. That, it's a very common dare. You know, it's not always spend the night at somewhere scary, but it's an extremely common dare to, like, go go look directly at something scary, or go touch something that's scary, stuff like that. And just, yeah, you know, I think when I was a kid, there was probably at least one dare of like try to spend the night in a really scary place or something. Now, yeah, I ended up not really. I don't. I watched YouTube videos. I don't really have anything to say about them. Let's see. And yeah, so the DVD, the makeup effects photo gallery is a minute long. I don't really have any comments. It's worth watching for fans. And then there's the featurette, which is 5 minutes and 24 seconds. And, it's it kind of just shows a chunk of the violence and nudity in the movie. I mean, it kind of plays like a demo reel, and for that, it's fine. It's just, I think when I watched it, I was like, this isn't really that much of a featurette. It's just it's clips from the movie. It's good. Like, it shows how good the effects are and and such, but it doesn't really like, yeah, it is just demo reel. I just feel like they should have just called it a demo reel. That's all. And there's the trailer. No comments. It's worth watching for fans. It is the same trailer as you can also find online. Although I think I had a little trouble finding it in English online, where on the DVD it's in English. I think online I found one that was German, but I didn't. Yeah. Anyway, and then there's a thing called Talent Files for Robert Hossein, who plays Boris, and Dario Argento. And it took me about 4.5 minutes to read through. Worth reading for fans. I don't really have any comments. It's Yeah, it's interesting. I found it interesting to read. And yeah, this was one of those cases where this section was very short. So that brings us to the final section. Critic sites, IMDb and Wikipedia. And I am just going to go through the specific ones that I wanted to. Let's see. Yeah, I think this is a Rotten Tomatoes user review. This person said, describes the movie as a fun throwback to Vincent Price's classic and the Hammer films. I'm afraid I haven't, heresy to admit as a horror movie fan, I haven't really watched Hammer films. I've watched it, which I know it's especially egregious because I love Christopher Lee. R.I.P. Incredibly talented. I love every performance of his. I even kind of enjoyed his Star Wars work. Just the man was incredibly talented. I might at some point watch the Hammer. I've watched a bunch of movies that reference that are throwbacks. So you've got this, you've got Sleepy Hollow, so I know what the blood spray, for example, looks like. The really and the specific color of blood, I feel like is a thing very specific to the Hammer films. Now, let's see. And yeah, this is also a Rotten Tomatoes user review. I probably like this film for the wrong reasons, but when the villain turns out to be a cousin of the Terminator, yeah. And this movie was not on Metacritic at all, which, yeah, I really feel like yeah. I mean, it's got such big names attached to it. I feel like, anyway. And, oh, that's right, this IMDb doesn't even have taglines for this one. That's very rare that I find. Yeah. And the DVD also doesn't. yeah, the closest it gets is it's it has a film by Sergio Stivoletti, but that's it. And yeah, it has it. The IMDb user ratings are not super like yeah. Let's see. Excuse me. Right. Wikipedia is excuse me. The Wikipedia let me think. The Wikipedia plot synopsis says that you know yeah they read the ending as that there at the end that Boris he was temporarily posing as Alex and Boris survived and is now free to kill again in a new location. Yeah, I feel like that is what I mean ultimately there's no way around there are still two skeletons who take off masks and put on, and have metal claws as well, and metal hands, and the whole, yeah, that's another thing. I'm not sure someone if you have a prosthetic limb, you probably don't love this kind of movie for, uh, you know, how it exploits. A lot of people are find it uncomfortable when someone has a prosthetic limb and yeah, this is one of the many horror movies that play into that kind of yeah. But yeah, the ending, either it's Alex who survived, or he somehow managed to switch. Yeah, and I still do think it basically just barely makes sense that, but you still have that. I mean, even if even the fact that there is one skeleton that is now covered with wax skin, even that is really hard to. That's a lot to ask for the audience to accept. But then to say, no matter how you slice it, whether that's Alex surviving or Boris surviving, there are two who have skeletons covered with wax skin. That really is very, very, even for one of them to have somehow replaced their body parts with metal, or for that, even that is already a lot to ask us to accept as true. And then we see that so I don't know. I mean, I guess once one of them has it, does that make it easier for the other one to, I don't know. Now, let's see. So I guess hmm. Right, so I think this is a review. Uh, hmm. Yeah, I'll just real quick see. This is a review from yeah, this is a review from a website that I found because IMDb linked to it as what's it called? As a external review. There we go. And yeah, I think this review makes some really good points. Yeah, they point to that as an Italian horror film, it has the carnage and the operatic visuals. I think that's a really good way to, yeah, operatic visuals, very much so. And let's see. Now, as a period horror film, Wax Mask bursts with style and wonderful cinematography. Added to this is the tight direction on the part of Stivoletti, his education under the hand of filmmakers like Dario Argento and Michel Soavi is plainly evident. While the film has a lot of sexuality in it, it never gets so extreme that it breaks the character of the film with tons of sleaze. This all results in the extremely effective creation of a believable environment. The subject matter occasionally departs into wild fantasy, but it does so in a way that adds to the film rather than making you laugh unintentionally. And yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to that. And let's yeah, this another review. The the production designer and the cinematography, cinematographer create a rich, opulent look that mixes pulpy, lurid comic book colors during the museum and kill scenes, that laboratory set with the big boiling tubes of colored water and the elaborate Victorian machinery looks like Walt Disney's Wonderful World of Hammer. That beautiful, beautifully put. And let's see. Now, this, let's see. Yeah, this reviewer says that I'm gonna. Yeah, apparently the guy who plays the journalist, this reviewer says, looks like one of the villains, not the quote unquote hero. Now, let's see. And yeah, his corpse, like so many others throughout the course of the film, are used in the Wax Museum's lifelike, not really, exhibitions seemingly presided over by a mad scientist, at least I think he's a scientist, with a degloved hand that is seeking revenge on a cheating wife. Although I think it's safe to say he had his revenge by now, and is just acting out for attention. Now, let's see. Yeah, and this person, let's see. Yeah, the prostitute strapped to a table, injected with some volatile serum. I don't. Well, Kenneth Strickfaden style electrical machines spark and crackle. I do really appreciate the spark and crackle. That, yeah, very. That really works as this the yeah. Let's see. Right, and one of the reviewers pointed out that the mystery plot takes a little too long to wrap up. I think the reviewer said, and yeah, that's it. That is, yeah. Now, The story is ostensibly the same from the prior two films. A mad sculptor and his weird assistants murder men, women, and children to create wax friezes of penalties and murder scenes past and present. Instead of a sculptor who exacts revenge on the man who burned his studio for insurance money, Boris Volkov is a cuckolded husband tossed into a vat of hot wax who survives and, like his cinematic predecessors, after sculpting a new face for himself, plots a return to the commercial art scene. Now, and right, yeah, this I feel like explains. Okay, his minions are crooks with a modicum of artistic skills, and his victims are plenty. But he orders his men to leave new costume designer Sonia Lafont. Okay, I'm gonna try Romina Mondello alone because she resembles a pure version of his dead, deceitful wife. Little does Volkov know that Sonia is in fact his daughter, but his jealousy and mixed emotions perhaps foster a greater urge to kill and create, ultimately fixating on Sonia when she too deceives him by having a romantic fling with tabloid news reporter Andrea Conversi, Riccardo Serventi Longhi, who uses Sonia to gain entry into Volkov's museum and trace a connection between recent killings and the secretive sculptor. That, yes, that makes a lot of sense. Once she deceives him, then he feels like, yeah, that's true. That's actually, come to think of it, when he takes off his gloves at the dinner table. I mean, he doesn't really say anything, but he does, like, he doesn't say that he's hurt, but he goes completely quiet. Maybe that's like the seeing that she doesn't trust him, is that's something that really drives him over the edge. I'm not sure. Now, let's see. Perhaps to differentiate the production from the two Warner Bros. Films, Volkov's mythology is more fantastical than practical. Instead of encasing preserved cadavers in wax, Volkov uses a Victorian contraption in his cavernous lair, switching levers which inject technicolor bubbly fluids into victims that have been strapped into a chair. A kind of Frankenstein meets Jules Verne process. The transmutation from human to sculpture is weird Victorian magic designed to visually impress more than make any sense. Levers move the victim like a puppet. And yeah, he says for no reason except perhaps to demonstrate Volkov's pleasure in already treating his victims as movable mannequins. I think it does both. I think it demonstrates that, but I think it might also be that, maybe it's just easier to, at that point, rigor mortis hasn't set in. So if you can manage to you know, what's it called? To get them to into a specific position like that. Yeah. The process is equally overblown. After blood is drained, the veins are filled with preserving blue goo. But for some reason, the victims are still conscious, even able to move eyes underneath plastic optics. Now, the film's provocative leanings encompass a father longing to revisit love through his daughter before infidelity poisoned his life, an assistant named Alex Umberto Bali in the second of only two films, whose childhood beatings mandate rough sex play, plenty of brothel scenes, and the killing of children. On the downside, the scenes are largely restricted to a handful of locations, and the Wax Museum set is quite limited, lacking the sprawling exhibits in the Warner film. That is very true. The yeah, and that's the 1950. I can only comment on the 1953 one, but it's a Hollywood movie. It's big, and yeah, I'm sorry. That is an area where that version has this beat. Now let's see. Yeah, let's see. The bit about Sonia almost being fed to the pigs, although she's clearly traumatized by the event and bears horrible scars on her arms, it's forgotten by morning with Sonia chipper. Again, that's true. And the finale is equally nonsensical, with Stivaletti, excuse me, turning unstoppable Volkov into a T-800 monster with an iron-shielded heart, and a twist that's ludicrous based on the mayhem that preceded the fiery demise of the museum and its sculptors. And yeah, it's... I didn't really go into, I mean, the head being cut off, let me think, that was that the... uh, I'm having trouble remembering if that was that the Jack the Ripper statue, or was it the guillotine, because both of them moved, and we'd seen heads be removed via the guillotine. I'm pretty sure that happened at least once before. And the Jack the Ripper also moved, but we've only seen him stab. We haven't seen him cut. But it was a neat idea. The thing with and he gets taken out by one of his own inventions, basically. Now let's see. Now let's see. I'm gonna scroll through and find something to read and or comment on. Right, and yeah, so that brings me to the IMDb user reviews. So let's see. Now, real quick before I forget, the one thing that's really one of the Vincent Price, one of the things in that is that the young woman realizes that there's dead people underneath the wax. Let me think. It's something about an earring. She finds her friend dead. I think it might be that the friend is wearing her earrings. She let her borrow them, and so she knows that's and she like, does she maybe break? She hits the wax and sees the... I don't remember exactly, but that's basically in I feel like that's what in this became, that not only are they real people, some of them are still alive, are still able to move, and the eye, the plastic eye comes off, and you see the real eye moving a little. Yeah. I would say that the atmosphere is spot on, and you also really do feel as if the setting is authentic. Now, let's see. That is all of my notes. So let me think if there is any final. Yeah, so I found Boris was very compelling, and honestly, you know, IMDb says there are no sequels to this, and I'm not sure it did that well. If they made one, oh wait, crap? Did I read that? I feel like I read that the Boris actor has died since they made this. In which case, R.I.P. And if not, sorry, maybe I'm thinking of someone else. But hypothetically, if there were a sequel and he played Boris, I I could see myself watching that just for him. I think I might have to check out some of his other movies because it really is very yeah. And yeah, I saw someone say that other than Boris, some of the other characters weren't that interesting. That's kind of true. I do feel like I don't think every movie needs to have compelling protagonists if the plot itself is more what we're supposed to be really wowed by, and they don't want the protagonist to be, to draw attention away from that. I think it's a little, it's just, the Sonia and the journalist are a little too bland. There's just not that much going on there. I mean, honestly, I think I was more, eh, you know, the blonde sex worker has more personality and more like it's not that Sonia can also be clever. Really, the yeah, the women in the film who get a chance to show themselves to be clever, to be able to think their way out of a situation, or try to improve a situation for them. But yeah, there's just I don't really know very much about. I mean, I know that she's traumatized by the you know the yeah, the attack, and obviously, yeah, she wants to the idea of being able to stop that guy is very, that she would love to be able to stop the man who killed her mother, even if it turns out to be her father. But that is basically it, and the I mean, you could really make something very compelling out of that, you know. So yeah, I think she should have been more interesting. I'm also not sure that I really felt like the love story between Sonia and the journalist made that much sense. I 100% bought it when she was really annoyed with him early on. When he takes a picture and then he's like, "Oh, but I don't know your address and I want to give you the picture," and it's like, and then he holds up the poster for a jump scare for her and the audience. I bought I'm not sure they have much romantic chemistry, really. The I bought it when she was annoyed with him, and when the movie was kind of playing him as being annoying. I warmed up to him later, but I didn't really like. I don't think I ever fully believed their love or passion, or them being all that attracted to each other. or at least not her being all that attracted to him. I didn't really get that from her performance. Now, let's see. I think Alex. I mean, ultimately, there is a pretty decent amount with him. Yeah, yeah. Alex is, but the yeah. Where did the second assistant even go? I'm not 100% certain when the last time we see him was, but I'm almost certain he was not accounted for there at the very end. I saw one reviewer say that like at the climax, characters drop out of the film. I'm not sure who other than the assistant with the scar. Wasn't everybody else either dead or no longer that involved? Because I'm pretty, yeah, the aunt dies. I'm almost 100% certain. We don't see exactly what happens to her, I don't think, but we see her be grabbed from someone off screen, and then we don't see her again. So she was killed off screen. I don't mind that, but I do. Yeah, the fact that the other assistant, I mean, the guy is a killer, so it would make a lot of sense to make sure to show what happens to him. Now, let's see. Yeah, I really I appreciate how this does, what it does and how well it does that to distinguish itself from the others, with the machinery and chemistry and this whole thing to create to create the wax sculptures instead of you know I don't remember the details, but I think with Vincent Price, it was basically like, I mean, he doesn't do all the things that they used to do to mummies, but something along those lines. I feel like he maybe remove internal organs. I'm sorry, I really don't remember. And would would they have done that in 1953? Had that as a major plot point? I'm not entirely sure, but I mean, that was they were making like they had made several uh, Frankenstein movies by then, and that has some really messed up science stuff in how he's created. So anyway, the honestly, I don't know if this is that I might be mistaken, but I can't help but wonder if this movie helped inspire the let me think. They're called frictional games. The developers, video game developers, frictional games, who, I mean, they're especially known for Amnesia, The Dark Descent, and Soma, but they also made Penumbra, all three parts of Penumbra, and let's see, they published. I'm not sure how much they did for Amnesia, A Machine for Pigs. I think it was mainly developed by, I want to say they're called the Chinese Room, but I forget. But yeah, I feel like some of the idea, the idea, some of the ideas in some of those games of this kind of horrifying machines keeping alive something that should by all rights be dead, and like morphing, really, making someone's face look really messed up and in a scary way, and the just I don't know, maybe they were inspired by some of the same sources instead, but if the machine that the you know if the machine excuse me, if the machine with where Boris straps down his victims, and you have the chemicals and all this stuff. If that showed up in one of frictional games, video games, it would not be out of place. And honestly, there are a couple of things in those games that remind me a lot of it. So, yeah, I don't know. It's possible that they're inspired by the same source, but I guess that pretty much covers it. I'll just briefly also say, you know, it's obvious and goes without saying, but the effects work is immaculate. I wish they used CGI less, because this was when CGI was not completely, I remember other movies that had, CGI in the 90s. Some of them were also horror, and it was just, yeah, it was too soon to start using CG for as much as they would use it for. But the practical effects are just incredible. I mean, when you see the metal hand in shot and like closing its hand, stretching, that's not a glove, and that's not like animation or something. They've had to build that thing. Every time you see the metal fingers move at all, they had to build that. They had to make the thing that moves, and yeah, that's right. And that skeleton, it's preposterous, but it looks incredible. It's, yeah, and yeah, the music, absolutely incredible. I think I saw someone say that the music was also operatic. I Yeah, it's definitely, yeah. And let's see, you have the, let me think. Yeah, if you're still watching and you haven't made up your mind yet, I would definitely say if you can find a version. Apparently, some people are so unfortunate. The version they have of this movie only has the one audio track, and it's the badly dubbed English version, and others were unfortunate enough to not have subtitles. They have the original Italian, but they don't have subtitles for it. And if I recommend the subtitled version. I mean, the moment that you say subtitles, there's almost always something that if there's subtitles in a different language than the one spoken, there's almost always going to be something lost, because no two languages are quite the same, even the ones that share a lot in common. And I swear I'm not going to get into a huge thing right now, but language is very fascinating, and it really is. But anyway, the yes, so I recommend, if you have a choice, I recommend the original language version, but with subtitles that you can understand. If because there just is something to the original actual, the original actors delivering those lines. And yeah, let's see. I think this might be real quick. I saw one reviewer say that they that sometimes it seems like the the killing is random, while other times it's very much for a purpose. I mean, let me think. Wasn't it? I'm not sure I offhand can think of an example of one where it felt like it wasn't, like the obviously the flashback killing. That's obviously the that's revenge based, the jealousy based. Then you have the, let's see, And yeah, attacking Sonia there at the very end, whether that's Boris or Alex, that must that must be revenge. If it's Boris, revenge for the deceit. If it's Alex, revenge for the beating he took. I guess the closest, yeah, but I feel like every other killing is to all the other times someone is killed, it's in order to crap, what's it called? For excuse me. There's a couple of revenge killings. Other than that, it's always to get subject for the statues, and I don't think there's really any exception to that. I don't know. It's possible that there's something that I missed, but yeah, I appreciate that they managed to make. Yeah, I already mentioned. I like that since there are so many individual scenes of someone coming face to face with Boris, I like that there are all these different, you know, yeah, I already went through them, but I think it was 5 different looks for him, so I really appreciated that. I I think the movie did a pretty good job of spacing out the kills. I've seen some horror movies where there's just like 1 or 2 scenes that have a ton of gore, and then the rest of the movie is kind of tame. And I think this, yeah, I think this does a good job. One of the first things you see is great gore. One of the last things you see is great gore, and along the way, there's great gore, there's great suspense. The movie never stopped being interesting. I never, the closest was that there were times where we spent a little bit too long time away from Boris and Alex, who are the interesting characters. I mean, once the blonde sex worker was no longer, once she became a statue, she, you know, yeah, there wasn't really, she didn't get to do anything after that. Now, let's see. I guess, let me think. So yeah, so different, and I think largely it avoids just repeating itself too much. I think overall there was enough variety. I didn't mind that there were so many individual victims of over the course of the film. I do think that there's 1 or 2 too many scenes of characters going into a place and then like looking for something, investigating that place, and then being grabbed. After a while, it became extremely obvious that okay, that this is just what's going to happen now. And I'm not saying it's alone in doing that, but I'm saying generally that's not something you don't want your horror movie to feel repetitive and tedious. That's it really loses tension then if the audience is saying like, oh, come on, we know where this is going, just move on. And most of the time that didn't happen, despite the fact that, I mean, if you boil it down, the movie is basically what, when you're watching this movie, either the it's either scenes of people trying to figure out who the killer is and something like that, or it's scenes of the killer or killers going out and kidnapping people. It doesn't really have a huge, yeah, a ton of very different types of varied scenes. Now, let's see. It's hard for me to judge the acting since I don't speak Italian, and yeah, I kind of have to take the subtitles word for that's what they just said. So it's hard for me to judge. But I felt like everyone was at least trying, and the Boris actor really, really nailed it. But apparently he's played other villain characters before, so maybe by this point it was like second nature. Let's see. There's let me think. Yeah, there's a thing. Let me think. Um, yeah, so I already talked about the characterization. The filming and editing is always great. I feel like they made for as wild and not realistic at times as the some of the material gets, I feel like the places it took place always felt real, keeping in mind that most of these places are, it's not like they just found location, maybe a little bit of it is found locations, but a lot of it is, they built this stuff. They figured out exactly what they wanted it to look like, and they did a really great job. And yeah, a movie like this, I feel like one of the big things is, does it have something really memorable? I've seen at least 2 dozen horror movies in my life that I do not remember because they had nothing unique to add. And I don't, I'm not saying that you can't still make a good horror movie, but if you don't have something unique to add, you better be a really good horror movie filmmaker. If you have neither, then your horror movie is probably going to be forgotten. And yeah, this one had some really unique stuff. It takes these ideas that we saw in the other, or at least in the 53 movie. I'm told they're also several of them are also in the 1933 movie, and they do, they add to it. The it wouldn't be enough for it to again be, oh, they're killing people and they're turning them to wax figures. I mean, 1997, that's what, 64 years after the first one came out. That's, you gotta add something new. I'm almost certain, even in that first one, it was that the bad guy is killing people and turning them into wax figures. So yeah, you gotta have something new, and the idea that they're actually alive under there is really, really, yeah. And the machines, I know there's no way someone who could make this happen is watching this, but if hypothetically the frictional games wanted to make something very similar, like I don't know, a movie adaptation, like I guess, yeah, sorry, video game adaptation of this movie, sorry. I guess you could have like maybe maybe the player character wakes up, you know, let's see, if they were strapped to the table, how would they get free? But maybe they wake up. Yeah, like they wake up. Just I really think it would be cool if to in a first person perspective go and like interact with the machine that you see in the lab. That I that would be really, really cool. I feel like you know it was also really cool to see, that there was I appreciate the amount of lever action this had, because for a while it's like the you see Boris do it a couple times, but then Andrea gets down there and he's like one lever after the other. Like, it's, yes, I know what that looks like. The That's a pretty good amount of lever action. I really appreciate, for as a lever lover. I love level the level of lever action in this movie. That was, yeah. I think that pretty much covers everything. But yeah, I probably will watch it again. I could see myself recommending it to people who like, who I thought might like at least some of the ideas and cool details. Probably not showing it to my dad. I think it's way too gory for him. And the Vincent Price movie has a special place in his heart, and I don't think he'd be interested in another version of the same movie. But yeah, it really, the yeah, it's let's see. I feel like they did a good job. You can tell that several of the biggest driving forces behind the movie were really passionate about it and understood why it's supposed to be scary. Which is, okay, I swear I'm going to make this brief, but another problem with Aliens vs. Predator Requiem is that the directors don't really seem to completely understand. Like, they realize that aliens and predators cause gore, but they don't necessarily completely understand why, or exactly the kind of, yeah. So the let's see, it is a, yeah, you could tell that they knew what they were doing. They have mad skills. They knew what, I'm sorry, I'm really running on way too little sleep here, and I don't drink coffee. But I'm not going to fall asleep on camera, which is why I'm probably going to stop recording very soon. However, the yes, they knew what they were doing. They understood how to make this work, how to make this scary, and how to, I mean, some of the concepts in this movie, you know, they are really out there, but they manage to pull it off in a way where, like, if you manage to pull it off in the right way, you can get away with a lot of really out there stuff in a movie. Maybe especially in a horror movie. And yeah, they found the right way to approach the material. I've honestly, I can imagine there probably are people who find it ridiculous, who for whom it doesn't work. But to me, the shots of the machine and the bubbly, brightly colored chemicals, all this stuff, it really worked. It was very, like, yeah. So I guess that completely covers it. So I hope you enjoyed watching, as I enjoyed watching and recording, and I will catch you next time. But for now, I'm going to catch some more sleep.